skeletons speak with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder in surprise when you hear these zombies shriek. Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul and seal your doom tonight. Spooky, scary skeletons.
Alice had always felt like someone was watching her. She would catch glimpses of a shadowy figure out of the corner of her eye, or hear footsteps when she was alone at night. At first, she thought she was just being paranoid, but as the weeks went on it became increasingly clear that someone was following her. One evening, Alice was working a few hours away from her home. She was walking towards her car after her night shift, when suddenly, she heard footsteps coming closer and closer. She paced her footsteps, quickly got inside her car and drove off the road. She was continually looking back from her rearview mirror and noticed that someone was continuously following her. She got scared. She quickly grabbed her phone and called her twin sister, Grace. Grace answered after only 2 rings. "Alice? Is everything okay?" Alice tried to keep her voice steady. I think I'm being followed," she said. Grace reassured her that she was safe, and that it's just her imagination. Alice hung up the phone, not knowing what to do next. After several hours, Alice's car came to a sudden halt. Despite her repeated attempts to start it, the vehicle refused to budge. She looked around for help, but there were no other cars in sight and no nearby gas stations where she could possibly take shelter. Suddenly, the car which was following Alice stops next to her car. A person gets out of the car. Alice cannot tell who it is because the person's face is covered, and is wearing a voice changer mask in which the voice of the person sounds different from its actual sound. The person walks to Alice's car and knocks on her window. She rolls her car window down. "What happened?" the person asked. "Oh, nothing. Thanks for asking," Alice replied and started to close her car window. The person placed their hand inside the car to stop the window from closing and said, "It looks like you need help. I can help you." Alice felt unsafe. "No, thank you. I already called my sister, she should be here soon," Alice said. "What if she doesn't arrive to help you? It's dangerous out here. There are no cars and no signal. I'm probably the only one who can help you," the person said. "That's none of your business and I don't need your help," Alice said, and was about to close her window again when the person pulled out a pocket knife and jumped in the window to stab Alice. Alice managed to dodge the attack. She grabbed her phone, got out of the car, and started running. The person also exited the car and chased after Alice. "You can't run away from me," the person yelled at Alice. Alice dials her sister's number and hears her sister's cell phone ring tone from behind her. She is shaken and doubts that the person behind her is truly her sister. She fears that the phone might have been stolen and her sister might have been murdered, and that whoever is behind her could be coming for her too. The attacker catches up to Alice and forces her to fall to the ground. Attempting to stab her, the attacker fails. Alice reaches to pull off the mask and verify the attacker's identity. When she sees the attacker's face, she is surprised. "Grace?" she says in disbelief. Grace looks up at Alice, panting heavily. "Yes, it's me," she replies, her voice trembling with emotion. "What are you doing here? Why are you attacking me?" Alice questions, fear and uncertainty in her voice. Grace stays silent. She lunged forward to stab Alice, but Alice manages to escape and run away. While Alice was fighting with Grace, her phone had fallen from her hands. She is running for a few minutes and Grace is still chasing her. She finds a gas station and runs towards it. When she arrives, she quickly asks for help. The person who is doing the night shift at the gas station asks her what had happened. "My sister is trying to kill me. She was chasing me." She looks behind, but Grace is nowhere to be seen. The person called the police and they arrived shortly after. They found Grace hiding in the woods with a knife in her hand. She even tried to stab the police officers. Turns out, Grace had been consumed by jealousy since Alice was born, and had been plotting her demise for years. She had been waiting patiently for her chance to finally get rid of Alice and take her place in the world. Alice was saved, but the experience left her traumatized. She will never forget that Grace had planned on killing her and taking her place in the world, and that fact still haunts Alice to this day. It was a dark and stormy night in the small town of Ravenwood. The wind whistled through the trees, shaking their branches and making them sway ominously. The people of Ravenwood were huddled in their homes, afraid to venture out into the night. But there was one creature that ventured out into the night, and most of the town knew its name, the Screamer. For as long as anyone could remember, this creature would roam the streets in search of its prey. It was a tall, slender creature with dark fur and long, pointed ears. Its eyes glowed red in the moonlight and its long claws scratched at the pavement as it walked. It was said that when the Screamer found its victim, it would simply stand in front of them and let out an ear-piercing scream. Those unfortunate enough to hear it would be frozen in fear, unable to move or escape. The Screamer seemed to take great pleasure in this, slowly advancing on its prey and letting out an even louder scream before finally killing them with a single swipe of its razor-sharp claws. No one knew why the Screamer had chosen Ravenwood as its home, but the people of the town lived in constant fear of it. On this particular night, the residents of the town had been extra vigilant and had closed their shutters tightly, hoping to keep the creature out. But, as luck would have it, one of the townspeople had ventured out for a walk that evening, and unknowingly stumbled right into the Screamer's path. The sound of its terrifying scream split the night air and the poor soul froze in terror, unable to run away. And so, as the townspeople watched in horror, the Screamer killed its prey with a single swipe of its claws and slunk back into the darkness. The townspeople of Ravenwood never again ventured out at night, too afraid of the creature that lurked in the shadows. They whispered to each other about the Screamer, wondering when it would strike again and who would be its next victim. Some even claimed to have spotted it lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next prey. Years passed, and the Screamer continued to terrorize the town. Until one day, a brave warrior made it their mission to put an end to the creature's reign of terror. After months of planning and preparation, they finally met the Screamer in battle. Despite their courage and skill, the warrior was no match for the Screamer and was killed in the fight. The townspeople wept for their hero for a long time. But suddenly, out of the darkness, came a group of brave adventurers who had been tracking the Screamer all along. Together with the townspeople, they defeated the Screamer and restored peace to the town of Ravenwood. The townspeople held a great celebration in honor of their heroes, and served as a reminder to never forget the bravery and courage it took to rid the town of its monster.
In the small town of Oakville, situated on the outskirts of a dense forest, there stood a huge, sprawling farm. Rows and rows of golden wheat would sway gently in the breeze. In every autumn, the fields would be decorated with colorful scarecrows. The children of Oakville would often come to the farm and play in the fields, especially during harvest season. One day, some of the children noticed a particularly tall scarecrow, standing ominously in the corner of the field. Although his clothes were frayed and tattered, it was still unmistakably him. The scarecrow had been there for as long as anyone could remember. Despite warnings from their parents to stay away, the children were drawn to the scarecrow like moths to a flame. They would gather around him, listening intently as he told them tales of things long gone. The stories were spine-tingling, full of monsters and darkness at every turn. The children found these stories utterly exhilarating, but they never noticed the strange things that began happening afterwards. Animals would suddenly go missing, only to be found mutilated in the forest. Even worse, some of the children would vanish entirely. After 2 years of mysterious disappearances, the townspeople of Oakville finally caught wind of what had been going on. In a rage, they stormed the farm and tore down the scarecrow, revealing that beneath his ragged cloak was something far more sinister. Rather than straw, the scarecrow was filled with the bones of the missing children. It turns out he had been harvesting the souls of the young and using their essences to fuel some sort of dark magic. The townspeople burned the scarecrow and scattered his ashes in the wind, never speaking of what happened again. But in the darkest parts of the night, when the wind blows, you can still hear his voice on the breeze. A reminder that sometimes, evil can take on an even more sinister form. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Emily who lived with her parents in a large house in a peaceful neighborhood. Emily was quite a curious girl who loved exploring and playing with fire. She would always light matches and burn small objects in her house. One day, while Emily was out playing, she stumbled upon a matchbox that had been left behind. She thought it would be fun to take it home and play with it. She started lighting the matches and throwing them in different directions. But one of the matches landed on top of a pile of newspapers that were left near the furnace. Just moments later, the newspaper caught fire, quickly spreading across the entire house in no time. Emily was so busy playing with the matches that she didn't notice the fire. By the time her parents rushed back home from work, the entire house had been engulfed in flames. They frantically searched for Emily, but it was too late. She was trapped in the burning house, and there was nothing they could do to save her. It was heartbreaking for the family to watch their beloved daughter perish in the flames. She was the only thing they ever cared about and always hoped she would grow up to make them proud. But sadly, that was not meant to be, and their love ended in tragedy. Emily's death in the fire left a lasting impression on the neighborhood. People learned to be more careful with fire and treat it with respect. It was also a painful reminder of how fragile life can be and how quickly everything can be taken away.